Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings. Welcome back to Chapter 3, Part 6 Feet Leg Displays During Courtship. This ties into what I closed with in Part 5 that, especially men, in order to avoid that perception of creepiness, it's incumbent upon you to know what is being conveyed by your potential romantic interest body language. If they turn away from you, if they close their arms off to you, if they broaden their foot stance in either a self defense manner or an escape manner, pointing towards the exit, those are all red flags that you're doing something that is pushing them off away from you, turning them off. And that's the value. That's one of the things that I suspect's been lost. We can call it, the uh, feminist toxicity. We can call it women's entitlement. We can call it bigotry. But at the end of the day, expecting an apple to become an orange is only going to result in frustration and a sense of futility. If you have the reasoned mind to understand and to practice, then yours will be the better to know what's actually being said. That's the reason that he titles this book What Everybody is Saying. In order to avoid any kind of complicated entanglements, whether it's, oh no, I'm being written up by HR because I looked up from my work for a moment and this woman thought I was leering at her, all the way to, well, they had a fight and now somebody is dead. That is the value of being able to read this, one's body language and to recognize, as I stated in the previous section, threat assessment. Both men and women, boys and girls, can benefit from this, but it's most often males who go into a situation and conduct an internal threat assessment of every environment they encounter. It's just the way that men are built. So this is, the value. If you want to do your part, I mean, without getting into the weeds about divorce court, family law, and the corruption of the just hyphen us system, that's going to be covered at a later time. And there's many others who cover that information. You know, there's an individual by the name of Father X on YouTube and on Twitter X that covers a lot of this. Amin Osiris has spent a good part of the past decade or more. If you need legal training to be able to help understand the legal aspect of it, Frederick Graves out of Florida has a low cost, bare bones, introductory how to win at law jurisdictionary. Just take juris as in jurisprudence, Juris, and add it to the front of dictionary, or type in Frederick Graves jurisdictionary, how to win in court. It'll take you to his website. Regardless, there's many avenues and there's many pitfalls, but chief among those is there's a saying separating the wheat and the chaff, right? And one of the most incumbent one of the most valuable tools. Let me just cut to the chase. One of the most valuable tools you will develop is by being able to read how people respond to your presence via their body language. In a future series, as I've alluded to, we'll cover forensic statement analysis. And that's not going to be as in depth because I'm not as skilled in it as Richard Whitehead is. But I want to introduce the concepts to you. But in order to utilize forensic statement analysis, you have to at least be invited to participate with another individual or a group. I mean, you can watch a video or listen, eavesdrop from a distance, but that's not going to all that you're going to miss certain contexts, certain cues that are also being displayed. So, because this subchapter category is titled has courtship in its title, I want to heavily emphasize that that is one of the best values about body language is it's going to help you be able to figure out there's a phrase called looks matching, and whether you stick strictly only to physical, one for one, or you go for the actual, you know, physical appearance, family background, family dynamics, societal priorities, work ethic, values, ethics, morals, all of that. Because there's the argument that in the West, there are no quote unquote good women because all women in the West are feminists. Ergo, feminist is a code word for female supremacy. So, without getting into the weeds about that, if your goal is to be able to have a harmonious interaction and perhaps even a development into a compatible lifelong relationship with someone, learning body language is going to save you a lot of heartache and a lot of legal fees and potentially separating out the bad apples, the chaff from the wheat, whatever, you know, whatever trite expression comes to mind. During high comfort social interactions, our feet and legs will mirror those of the other person we are with. Isopraxis. I want to pause on the word isopraxis as we've established. Praxis means, you know, it's proximity. Approximately is a variation of the word proxima, proxmatic. So, how close in time, how close in space is this to you? ISO is another word that is, think about it, island, isolated. ISO is, you know, it's apart, it's separate. So they're breaking it down to individual components and their relationship to you. Isopraxis, and will remain playful. In fact, in the extreme stages of comfort during courtship, the feet will also engage the other person through subtle foot touches or caresses. During courtship, and particularly while seated, a woman will often play with her shoes and dangle them from the tips of her toes when she feels comfortable with her companion. Most of us have seen videos, if we've not seen it in real life, of this display. This behavior will, however, quickly cease if the woman suddenly feels uncomfortable. A potential suitor can get a pretty good reading on how things are going based on the shoe play behavior. If upon approaching a woman or after talking with her for a while, her shoe play stops, she adjusts her shoe back on her foot, and especially if she follows this by turning slightly away from the suitor and perhaps gathering up her purse, well, in the language of baseball, the suitor has most likely just struck out. You're out of there! Even when a woman is not touching her suitor with her foot, this type of foot dangling and shoe play is movement. and movement draws attention. Therefore, this nonverbal behavior says, notice me, which is just the opposite of the freeze response and is part of the orienting reflex that is instinctive and draws us near to things and people we like or desire, and away from those things we don't like, don't trust, or of which we are not sure. Seated leg crosses are also revealing. When people sit side by side, the direction of their leg crosses become significant. If they are on good terms, the top leg crossed over will point toward the other person. If a person doesn't like a topic his companion brings up, he will switch the position of the leg so that the thigh becomes a barrier. All right, so this is the first of two. So pause the video and take a screenshot if you are inclined for your own records. This is the leg crossed over, allowing the knee to point towards the individual. Now, granted, in the buildup of the paragraph, they say side by side. This is not side by side. This is essentially opposition, face of, almost face to face. But it still illustrates the same message. In this photo, the man has placed his right leg in such a way that the knee acts as a barrier between himself and the woman. All right, like I said, pause it, take your screenshot, take your notes. In this photo, the man has positioned his legs so that the knee is further away, removing barriers between himself and the woman. All right. You can see, this is the value of learning the action units, the micro expressions, because between the two images, go back and look at the other one and compare it to this one. Their faces are much more receptive to the other's existence and involvement in their personal space. This one is more open, the other one wasn't. So if you have any questions, this is the reason why I've been hammering with Chase Hughes's ellipsis model for the behavior table of elements. You have to take all of these individual elements and build up to what they represent. For example, the previous section, the previous part dealt with the knee clasp, and we saw that the confirming gesture was a thigh clasp. So keep these things in mind, that don't just don't just look at somebody's knee placement and think, "Oh, okay, yep, this works, it doesn't work." Look at it all combined. Such blocking behavior is another meaningful example of the limbic brain protecting us. If there is congruence in the way both parties are sitting and crossing their legs, then there is harmony. And take that word and write it down, congruence. If I haven't said it already, it is a fundamental aspect of body language instruction and training, is that you have to have congruent body language in order to get an accurate comprehension of what is being communicated. All right, the next subtopic, our need for space. Ever wonder what kind of first impression you've made on someone? Whether they seem to like you from the outset, or rather, if there could be difficulties brewing. One way to find out is the shake and wait approach. Here's how it works. Foot and leg behavior is especially important to observe when you first meet people. It reveals a lot about how they feel about you. Personally, when I first meet someone, I typically lean in, give the person a hearty handshake, depending on the appropriate cultural norms in the situation, make good eye contact, and then take a step back and see what happens next. One of three responses is likely to take place. A, the person will remain in place, which lets me know he or she is comfortable at that distance. B, the individual will take a step back or turn slightly away, which lets me know he or she needs more space or wants to be elsewhere. Or C, the person will actually take a step closer to me, which means he or she feels comfortable and or favorable toward me. I take no offense to the individual's behavior because I am simply using this opportunity to see how he or she really feels about me. One thing that I've developed over the years of having been trained in body language, microexpression training, social engineering, is developing certain litmus tests. And we've all come across them. People will, drop their litmus test to see if you are one of them or not. You find it with ideologically entrenched individuals. For example, over the last decade, our society has become very, very, you're either with us or you're against us. You know, you know, in terms of your silence is complicity, or your your unwillingness to disavow, you know, means you're complicit, whatever, you know, and whether you can make the argument that these are truths, but they're all a form of a litmus test. With body language, you can do an exercise such as what Mr. Navarro just recounted and be able to ascertain, somebody, a litmus test, how they feel about you, and it doesn't have anything really to do about you. It is about them, their sense of security, their sense of comfort. For all you know, you just walked into a situation after they just got done having uh, an incredible argument or an intense celebration, and both of those opposite ended, barometers are going to skew how they interact with you. Keep those things in mind. Their existence is not in a vacuum to just respond to you. This is the reason you establish a litmus test, is to figure out a baseline and to begin building from there. And that's why you develop certain questions and certain topics to introduce that are non-threatening and non-invasive. Remember, the feet are the most honest part of the body. If a person needs extra space, uh, I give it. If he or she is comfortable, I don't have to worry about dealing with a proximity issue. If someone takes a step toward me, I know they feel more comfortable near me. This is useful information in any social setting, but also remember you should set limits as to what makes you feel or what makes you comfortable when it comes to space. All right, what I'm going to suggest is going to seem counterintuitive to everything else that I've been championing, and that is use a body worn camera. And the reason suggest doing this is men pay attention to this in particular. Men work on their own quite often. They're willing to collaborate, but whether striking out on your own or working as a group to achieve a goal, teamwork, it doesn't matter. Men can do it, but women are much more organized on a social level. What that means is, in order to survive, a man knows he can do it either as an individual or as a group. Women collaborate 100%. That's why there's the tropes about old wives' tales and gossiping and you know uh, shaming. Shaming is a great example of a feminine trait. Men can do it, and men do it directly, women do it indirectly. But the reason you want to have a body camera on is if you are interacting with a woman and she does everything that Mr. Navarro is illustrating here, that you approach to handshake and you've done nothing wrong, she steps closer to close the gap and all you do is handshake. But the next thing you know, you're having some kind of incident, whether it's harassment at work or uh, a legal charge of some sort, that body camera is going to be able to show you because it will not stand up in court your word of, hi, I listened to him read Joe Navarro's book about body language and I took notes and she took a step towards me. There's no verification, there's no evidence, there's no documentation. That is what happened. And that is what you need to have is that documentation. And a reason I bring up how women work, how men work, is that women are more skilled at social engineering and knowing how to manipulate a situation to capture a man, a Venus flytrap, if you will, to take advantage and to take their target out in a very surgical and precise manner because they know that most men are not threatened by them. Therefore, they can encroach upon your private space and then label you as the aggressor. Having a body camera shows that she is the one who closed that gap, and it may not stand up in court in itself, but it will stand up in the sense of it's better than not having it. And that's a big question you want to ask yourself. Do you want evidence that backs up your claim or her claim?